Hey everyone, Jared here. Today we're going to be covering the hip flexor, the 4 best stretches for the hip flexor. Now there's also an article down below. You can link to it if you want more information. There's also a way to just subscribe to the email list where I send out like 3 or 4 easy to digest emails per week, inspirational type of stuff. So let's get into the 4 beginner, what I consider the best hip flexor stretches. And when I say hip flexor, it's really important that we clarify that I'm talking about this psoas muscle, which is the main muscle that gets contracted when you sit. So normally when you're nice and tall, this muscle, which attaches to the middle of your spine and goes down to the top of your leg, it runs across the front of your hip. Now when you're sitting down, this muscle gets shorter. You sit down all the time, it starts to tighten. So that way when you stand up, this muscle's short and tight and it's tight. So this is really geared for people who sit a lot. There are a lot of other stretches that are great hip stretches, but we're only going to be covering the hip flexor stretches today, the psoas stretches. And let's dive on into it. The first one is going to be what I consider to be the basic one. It's probably the one you've seen in a yoga class. It's the one that you did in PE class. All right. It's called a standing hip flexor stretch. And it's very simple. You have your feet. You step forward with your right foot. You can hop your left foot back. Now look at me. My chest is vertical and I'm going for a little stretch in the front of my left hip. I'm going to square my hips forward. And right here, already I can feel a gentle stretch right here. Now, if I need balance, I can put my hand down on a bed, on a chair. And right here, you just hold right here. Let me zoom in. I'm going to actually come a little bit closer. My hips are square right here. You can feel that stretch. I can feel a little stretch right there. Nice and easy. Just hang out here. That's it. Count to 30 seconds. Nice and easy. And then you would switch sides, okay? Now what I'm gonna do now is a variation. This is our second pose, the kneeling hip flexor stretch. And the kneeling position is more stable. You can go deeper, but it just requires that you put your knee on the ground. And that sometimes can hurt people's knees. So I'm actually gonna grab a pillow right here and I'm gonna put a pillow on the ground, all right? So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna step my right foot back and I'm gonna drop my right knee down onto the ground, all right? Now, right now, my left knee is 90 degrees. My knee is over my ankle, all right? So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna square my hips. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start pressing my hips forward. You can kind of tighten your stomach right here. Press your hips forward. Right here, I'm already getting a fairly good stretch. Okay? Now, it's very important that your knee does not hurt, but that you're getting the stretch in the front of your right hip in this position. Now, I'm gonna offer 2 variations. Okay, this first one is more advanced. It's where you put your hands on the front knee and then you slowly come into the pose more and more and more and more and more and more. Now, if you look at this, my knee is in front of my foot now. It is above 90 degrees, but it's actually fine because we have so much support down here. This deepens the stretch right here. See how I shifted forward and back, right? So this is a deeper stretch when you shift forward and you can feel that pretty easily. Here's one rule of thumb. I will give another variation here, but one rule of thumb. When you are stretching, if you stretch, eventually your muscles will start to tremble, all right? Like when you touch your toes and you go down, 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 and you start to tremble, the backs of your legs start to shake or tremble. That is a sign that you're possibly at risk of overstretching and injuring yourself. So when you're stretching this hip, you're leaning forward. If that hip starts to tremble and shake, you want to back off a little bit, all right? So you go to the point where the muscle starts to tremble and you back off a little bit so it's stable, but you're still getting a nice stretch right there. All right. So the other variation is where you are in the standing position, right? You were standing, step your foot back, maybe step the other foot forward. And what you can do here is engage your core. You can tilt your pelvis a little bit. These are advanced little tips, but then you can drop down into the standing kneeling pose. You can shift forward. You can come back up. Do this with great technique, and you're actually going to work out your legs, and you're going to get a good stretch in the front of your hip flexor. Okay, so those are the very standard poses that I wanted to show you. I'll show you another one real quick. I'm actually going to see if I can quickly change the angle of the camera, and we're going to go down on the ground. And you can see me in the mirror. Cool. All right, so let's put this down on the ground. We're going to be doing bridge pose. I'm going to tilt the angle back down a little bit. Bridge pose is probably the most beginner-friendly pose. Oops. So what bridge pose looks like, there we go, is where, so if you're having trouble with the first two poses, what I suggest is that you try this pose right here, okay? So look at your knees are up to the ceiling, your hips are square. What I mean by hips square is that your left knee is in front of your left shoulder, your right knee is in front of your right shoulder, all right? All you do is you touch your heels, you press up, all right? Now, this is a gentle stretch. You might feel a little stretch in the front hips. You're engaging the core, the legs, that's it. You can press really high up there. If you'd like to grab your hands and wriggle your shoulders underneath your back, you can. You can lift your toes up. You can even lift a leg up and hold. All right, you can bring it back down, bring it back up. There's various workouts you can do here. All right, but the essential pressing right here, it's a great beginner pose if you are just starting to open up your hip flexors and they're a little bit tight for those standing poses. All right, let's move on to our last pose. And we're actually gonna be doing the most beginner-friendly pose right here. This is one of my favorites. It's actually because you're laying down. It's very simple. You can lay down in your bed and you wanna lay down on the side, and this is all you do. You get really close to the edge and you gotta have some support. I'm actually gonna grab the side of the couch right here, just hang. And I'm just gonna hang my leg up off the edge. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have this knee, I'm gonna lean this knee back the other way, lean it the opposite way. And this is a gentle stretch. If I was higher in a bed, my leg would dangle. So I'm gonna mimic the dangling by grabbing my foot, and I got a great stretch going on right here. It's right in the front of my leg. All right, so if your leg hits the ground, what you can do is perhaps grab the foot. Okay, this will increase the stretch, and you can have that knee forward or up. It really doesn't matter. But this is a great stretch right here for the front of the leg. All right, and then lastly, there's a great hip training, back opening online program. I think it's $17. I'm gonna recommend it. The link is down below. Again, it's all on my blog post as well. So be sure to check out that blog post, and really helps the channel out. If you like this video, subscribe for more content. And then lastly, if you want to get my inspirational emails, you can go down and use that link down below. All right, that's it. Namaste.